Welcome to Aging Gracefully. I want you to live a long, healthy life without regrets. And today I have my guest, Betty Lou Higgins, back for the second time. One of my favorites. Thank you so much for being here today, Betty Lou.
Thanks for having me, Catherine. It's always good to talk to you and to share stories with you.
Oh, it's so fun. And I just love your attitude and always positive and always smiling. So, no wonder so many people love you and Eden Valley Enterprises. Let's have a little bit of history of that so the readers and subscribers know. And then we're going to have a story today.
Well, Eden Valley's been putting together historical programming since 1977, and we've run the gamut of topics from the Ohio Erie Canal to World War II and the Depression. And most recently, we did our first documentary on Ohio and Emma Gatewood, first woman to solo through hike the Appalachian Trail at the age of 67. And she had 11 children and had never done that before. And our documentary Trail Magic got an Emmy nomination. So we're really happy about that. And now we're working on another documentary to kind of follow up.
Isn't it wonderful when you love your work? Right?
It certainly is.
Yes, and I know you do. So today's story is called Show Out Joe, and it's a story of Shoeless Joe Jackson. It's written by Kelly Boyer Saggart, correct?
And she wrote the script for Trail Magic, so she's one of our regular contributors to stories here.
And Eden Valley Enterprises is a 501c3, a nonprofit, right? Yeah. And so if anybody wanted to contribute, they can as well. I will have. So it's baseball season, and you've got a story to tell. Shall we start?
Thanks, Catherine. Sun scorched the earth in the town of Brandon Mills, South Carolina. On Saturday mornings, the town's cotton mill was downright noisy, with grinding and thumping sounds, bells ringing, whistles blowing, men hollering words that got swallowed up in the chaos. The air smelled like molten metal. Men scurried around the mill, not meeting one another's eyes, not having enough time. That is, all except for one older man who leaned against the outside of the building, legs stretched out in front of him as he casually chewed a piece of hay. "Call me Joe," he said, looking up, grinning, exposing several gaps in his smile. His voice came out slow and smooth, a taste of pure Southern syrup. "What?" he added, a puzzled look on his face. "Surprised to see me here? What'd you think? You'd find me in jail?" "I was there once, sure, but not for the reason you might expect." Sighing, he tossed the hay to the ground, grumbled as he stood up, brushing the dust off his backside. "Come on, I'll show you." Joe hobbled as he entered the factory, and the noise grew louder. But as he walked through the mill, walking became easier for him. In fact, an amazing transformation took place. His body muscled, his hair grew thicker, and his eyes sparkled. He was once again a young man. "Hey, Joe," shouted another man who was struggling to pick up a heavy load of cotton. "Give me a hand?" Joe grinned, showing off a mouthful of teeth as he flipped that cotton over his shoulder as if it weighed no more than a handful of dust. And after he tossed the cotton in a wagon, a whistle blared, louder than anything heard yet, but the men didn't cringe. Their shoulders slumped in relief. Joe led the charge out of the building, and by the time he got back outside, he was wearing a uniform, a baseball uniform. The area around the mill was now being used as a baseball field, and as Joe ran out into the field, he looked as sleek and sure as a barely contained panther. When he swung his black bat, the crowd cheered, tossing precious quarters at him as he rounded those bases. After Joe touched home plate, he tipped his hat, collected the quarters, and the dust was billowing all around him. His teammates were some of the very same men who'd been working at the mill earlier that day, but none were as young as Joe or as strong. When the other mill team came up to bat, Joe headed out to center field. And after he'd catch a fly ball, he didn't run towards the infielders to toss the ball. Instead, he kept moving back. The crowd started cheering, "Show out, show out, show out," wanting their hometown hero to demonstrate how he could throw a ball from the outer reaches of the center field and have that ball sail past the catcher. Joe didn't disappoint. Once he backed up as far as space allowed, he threw the ball like a rock leaves a slingshot, and the ball went past the shortstop, past the pitcher, even past the catcher, landing somewhere beyond home plate in the midst of the swirling mass of fans who continued to celebrate his strength with calls of "Show out, show out, show out." The baseball game then faded into the shadows, and the other players disappeared into the mist as Joe strode back to home plate. "Just see that?" he asked, his face alight with joy. "Just see how far I could throw?" His happiness dimmed somewhat as he continued talking. "You know, I didn't want to leave my team or the Mill League, but my coach told me my contract had been bought out. Next thing I know, I'm in a professional league with men who'd gone to college. I couldn't read or write my name like they could, but I could still hit and run and throw with the best of them. They bought me brand new shoes called cleats. I'd never even seen cleats before. They really hurt my feet, blistered them, to tell you the truth. So I told the new coach I couldn't play. And he said to me in a stern voice, "Joe Jackson," he said, "I'm paying you $75 a month. And if I say you're playing, you're playing. Understood?" Joe bent down and rubbed his feet at the memory. "I went out, I played. But I sure couldn't wear those dang shoes. So I played in my socks. Nobody paid me much mind, that is, until I hit a triple. Then, as I was sliding into third, somebody in the crowd yelled, 'You shoeless son of a—'" Never you mind what he said, doesn't matter. The point is, people started calling me Shoeless Joe. But in my entire life, I never played one single other game without shoes. Who would do that? And then they sent me up north to a place called Philadelphia. You ever hear of that town? Sending me without my Katie. I tried sneaking back home a bunch of times, succeeded some of them. That made the newspaper reporters say I was scared. I was turning tail, so I wouldn't have to play against Ty Cobb. Well, that wasn't true, of course. Ty was a Georgia boy. I wanted to play him, only I wanted to play him back here in South Carolina with my boys from the mill. I'd put those guys up against anybody. Joe bent down, yanked a piece of grass, and chewed on it thoughtfully. In Philadelphia, you know, people drove cars right down the center of the city streets. Instead of cooking dinner, the team ate in restaurants. Some people even had electric lights in their houses. Right odd way of living, if you don't mind me saying so. No insult meant if you did those kinds of things in 1908. Anyhow, they eventually sold me to Cleveland, and I got to take my Katie. Made my life a whole lot better. Hey, you ever been to Cleveland? Not, let me tell you something. Cleveland's got a river running right through it, just like Brandon Mill. Got factories too. I felt more at home. By then, people were saying I was one of the best players ever. And much as I don't like bragging, I was. I could swing Black Betsy and hit that ball further than just about anyone except Ty Cobb, and nobody could throw from the outfield like me. And I do mean nobody. You know what else I loved about Cleveland? The kids. They'd wait for me outside a league park. I'd show them how to bat. The newspaper once printed a picture of a bunch of barefoot boys trying to watch Cleveland's game through a hole in the league park fence, and they added a caption that made it seem like one of the boys was hollering, "Jackson's up, fellers!" For some reason, Joe suddenly hung his head and didn't look so happy anymore. He kicked up some dirt before speaking again. Bet you're wondering about the most shameful night of my life. And all I'm going to say is this. Yes, it's true. I did have my own vaudeville show. And yes, it's true that Joe's girls were easy on the eye. Maybe I should have come home after that vaudeville tour ended, but I never stopped loving Katie. And I do mean never. Why, when she sent the sheriff after me and accused me of running around, I hardly knew what to say. And then when the sheriff started taunting me, I swung at him before I could stop myself. That night in jail was the longest night of my life. I kept wondering if Katie would ever forgive me. When she did, I gave up vaudeville, not worth the temptation. And I got nothing more to say. I hope you understand. The wind kicked up just then and dust swirled around Joe. And although he didn't look older when the dust settled, he looked weary. He looked worn down, worn out. I suppose you also want to know if it's true. If the 1919 White Sox team lost the World Series on purpose to help out the gamblers, I suppose you want to know if I really took the money to throw the games, if we really did throw the series. Well, as long as you promise not to say anything more about that woman on the vaudeville tour, I'll tell you. He took a deep breath and let it out. I never threw a game, not against the Cincinnati Reds in the World Series, and not any other time neither. Other than Katie, baseball was my entire life. And just look at my record. I was the only one in the World Series with a home run. And I mean on either team. My batting average was the best too. I didn't make any errors. As far as money goes, yeah, I took some. I figured if the fix was on, I might as well keep my share, help my sister Gertrude pay her medical bills. I guess I didn't expect fellas to really lose on purpose, but some of them did. Not sure what else I can say. Looking down, he kicked home plate and then looked back up. After I got thrown out of baseball, I went around the country playing in leagues under fake names. But I could never keep myself and my identity a secret for long. I was still strong. I was still fast. I was still better than anybody out there. People would figure out who I was, and then I'd have to find a new team in a new town. I played baseball like that until I was in my 40s, always on the run. And then, just when it looked like I could finally tell my side of the story about the World Series on national television yet, my ticker gave out. Had a heart attack. What a rotten thing. What rotten luck. And with those words, Joe turned around and started walking away into the mist. As he got closer to center field, he began to trot, and these words continued to echo long after Joe, Shoeless Joe Jackson, could be seen. Show out, show out, show out, show out. And that's Joe Jackson's story.
And that was awesome. Thank you. I love the way
Thanks,
you
Catherine.
read and you have the dramatics in there and make it so much more interesting that way. And that is a fun story. I
Yes.
really didn't know anything about Shoeless Joe Jackson until this opportunity with you.
Yay.
Yes, and I think that the readers will probably say the same thing. So I'll bet we're going to see some comments on the blog post and we'll
Great.
see what other people have to think. But I appreciate your time so much, Betty Lou. Thank you for being back with us. And I have the feeling we're going to be doing this again.